The whisper that became thunder. When love refused to stay invisible. Midnight in Seoul. Rain fell lightly, clinging to the cold glass of tall buildings. The city seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something that could not be explained, yet everyone knew was coming. In a narrow room without stage lights, lit only by a dim desk lamp, two silhouettes sat facing each other. No official cameras. No managers. No strategy. Only a small recorder on a wooden table, its red light blinking, capturing the seconds that were about to change the world. A whisper. Then the strum of a guitar. And finally a voice. Jungkook, soft, almost like a prayer. Some truths are too heavy to carry in silence. Then Taehyung, his voice deep, trembling yet certain. But silence was never made for us. Only 2 lines. But the world trembled. Because within minutes the recording leaked online. Not a polished studio demo. Not a staged performance. It was real. Raw. A fragment of honesty that was never meant to surface. And ARMY knew this was not just a song. Not just a leak. This was a confession. The thunder. When whispers refused to die. Hashtags were born like a storm. Hashtag the whisper. Hashtag Taekook thunder. Hashtag no more silence. Twitter burned. International forums exploded. Even media outlets that usually kept their distance now carried bold headlines. When 2 voices refused to be silent, CNN. A whisper heard around the world, BBC. Not scandal. Not rumor. But thunder. The New York Times. And in Seoul, HYBE panicked once again. Internal documents leaked, cold chain emails surfaced. Damage control. Immediate suppression. Silence the leak. But it was too late. Because the whisper had already become thunder. And thunder cannot be put back into a bottle. The storm. When the world finally chose a side. Times Square lit up again. Not a face. Not a brand. Not an ad. Just one white sentence on a massive black screen. We are not shadows anymore. The crowd froze. People lifted their phones, recording. Tears broke out on the streets of New York, Tokyo, Paris, Jakarta, Manila. They knew this wasn't promotion. This wasn't a campaign. This was a declaration. ARMY forums turned into battlegrounds of ideology. If they dare to be honest, then our duty is only one: to be their shield. Love has never been wrong. What's wrong is the world that tries to imprison it. Dodger was the beginning. Stay awake was the promise. The fire was the rebellion. And the whisper is the truth. The room. When 2 hearts refused to hide. Meanwhile, in that same small room, the 2 figures still sat side by side. The world outside was burning, but inside there was only soft silence. Jungkook looked at Taehyung. We've crossed the line. There's no turning back. Taehyung smiled faintly, his eyes weary but filled with certainty. We don't need a way back. We only need to keep walking forward. A simple sentence, but louder than thousands of concerts. Because behind it were courage, scars, and a love that refused to be silenced again. The beginning of forever. When love became louder than fear. The internet gave the song a name, The Whisper. But in truth it was no longer a whisper. It was thunder. A storm. A revolution, born from a love that refused to die in silence. Dodger was the spark. Stay awake was the prayer. The fire was the rebellion. The confession was the truth. And the whisper was the beginning of something that could never be stopped. Because love, once it finds a voice, will always find a way to live. Because honesty, once freed, will always find ears to hear it. And because those 2 hearts, once they chose to speak, no world could ever force them back into silence. Seoul's night remained cold, the rain still falling. But behind the glass, behind thousands of glowing screens, the world knew one certain thing. This was not the end. This was only the beginning. The uprising. When Whisper turned into a song the world couldn't unhear. The rain stopped in Seoul, but the world did not. That wet night gave birth to something greater than a leaked song. Because the whisper, once just 2 voices in a small room, had become a wave reaching every corner of the earth. No longer was it just ARMY listening. No longer just a fandom that cared. Global media, international musicians, even human rights activists began to write about it. 2 young men chained by an industry found freedom in a whisper, wrote The Guardian. This isn't just about music anymore. It's about truth, wrote Rolling Stone. And in Seoul, a mural appeared overnight on a concrete wall near Hongdae. Black paint, simple lines, two silhouettes sitting side by side with a guitar. Beneath them, 3 words that made people stop on the street. Let them sing. The resistance. When silence tried to return. Of course, not everyone was ready. HYBE moved quickly. The song was pulled from every platform, accounts sharing the recording were blocked, fan sites shut down. Like before, an effort to smother the voice again. But this time was different. Because the more they tried to silence it, the louder the world screamed. Fans printed the whisper lyrics on t-shirts, posters, even school walls. In Manila, thousands sang it in the streets. In Mexico City, the sound of guitars and voices filled the square. They told us to be shadows, but shadows can burn too. What once was just a whisper between 2 people had become the choir of millions. The hidden stage. When love refused to stay behind closed doors. Then another rumor spread. That in a hotel in Japan, Jungkook and Taehyung were recording again. Not just a demo but a full song. A manifesto. No label. No studio. Just 2 chairs, 1 guitar and a simple laptop. Someone leaked a fragment of the lyrics. Not a video. Not even an audio file. Just text. But it was enough. We don't need permission to exist. We don't need permission to breathe. If love is a crime, then let the world carry the guilt with us. Fans named it the uprising, the turning point. When the world realized there was no going back. CNN aired a full segment, The Uprising, when pop music became protest. BBC called it a modern love story written in fire and thunder. In Korea, newspapers split in 2, some labeling it a dangerous scandal, others calling it priceless courage. But whatever was written, the world knew, the way back was gone. Amid the chaos, a new billboard lit up in Seoul. Not HYBE. Not a sponsor. Not an ad. Just a simple sentence that stopped traffic that night. Love is not a scandal. The unseen concert. When music became revolution. Weeks later, a mysterious video surfaced online. No clear source. No watermark. Just a title. For those who stayed awake. The video showed a dark room, lit only by candles. 2 chairs. 1 guitar. 2 voices. Jungkook began, low and steady. We are not afraid anymore. Taehyung followed, deeper, heavier. We are not shadows anymore. Then together, their voices burst like a storm. We are alive and we will not hide. The video lasted only 3 minutes. But it was enough to shake the internet. Enough to make millions cry in front of their screens. And the most shocking part, HYBE couldn't take it down in time. Thousands had already saved it, copied it, shared it again and again. The whisper was a murmur. The uprising was a shout. And this video, this was an unseen concert. A concert with no stage, no tickets, no permission. A concert that lived in the hearts of anyone brave enough to listen. The dawn. When love finally became unstoppable. Morning in Seoul felt different. The sky was the same, the towers still stood tall, but something lingered in the air. As if the world itself was bracing for something greater. And in that hotel room, the 2 sat side by side again. No cameras. No reporters. Just them and a world that waited. Are we ready for what comes next? Jungkook asked, eyes heavy with exhaustion but burning with fire. Taehyung exhaled, then gave a faint smile. The world doesn't get to decide that anymore. We do. And with that sentence, their love's revolution crossed the point of no return. Dodger was the spark. Stay awake was the prayer. The fire was the rebellion. The confession was the truth. The whisper was thunder. The uprising was the storm. And what comes next is no longer just a chapter. What comes next is history. The reckoning. When love finally faced the world. Seoul was no longer the same. Streets overflowed with posters, murals, and whispers that had turned into shouts. Their names were no longer just a trend, they had become a symbol. A symbol of love, courage, and resistance. HYBE finally broke. A press conference was called. Camera flashes lit the air, reporters pressed forward, everyone waiting. Would it be denial? Justification? Or another attempt to silence the storm? But when the doors opened, it wasn't the CEO, the lawyers, or the company's voice. It was the 2 the world had been waiting for. Jungkook. Taehyung. The room froze, then erupted in light. Jungkook leaned into the microphone, his voice steady. There are things we can no longer hide. We tried silence. We tried obedience. But that night at Dodger, the whisper, the fire, it was us. Chaos filled the air. Reporters shouted. Flashbulbs screamed. Then Taehyung lifted his gaze to the camera. If loving is sin, then let the world bear it with us. We are only human. We only want to live. And we will not hide anymore. The silence that broke forever. When the industry could no longer deny. Those words shattered screens, walls, and doubts. CNN, The Reckoning, when two voices changed everything. BBC, not scandal. Not shame. But history. And for the first time, a Korean headline without censorship. Taehyung and Jungkook, the love that refused to die. Investors panicked. Sponsors shook. But the people stood with them. The truth could no longer be twisted. And ARMY? They didn't just cry. They sang. From Seoul to London, New York to Jakarta, thousands of voices joined in one chant. Stay awake. Stay alive. Stay together. The dawn of a new era. When love became history. That night, in a quiet hotel room, the two sat side by side. No stage. No spotlight. Just two breaths, finally unburdened. Jungkook whispered, "Are we ready for this?" Taehyung held his hand firm. Love doesn't need readiness. Only courage. And the world knew history had been born. Dodger was the spark. Stay awake, the prayer. The fire, the rebellion. The confession, the truth. The whisper, the thunder. The uprising, the storm. The reckoning, the moment love faced the world without hiding. This is not the end. It is the beginning of everything. Because love, once spoken, never returns to silence. Because truth, once born, never dies. And we are all witnesses. That's all for today's story. See you in the next video. Because this fire has only just begun.